Catherine is an outsider. Parasites get out. While cooking a meal at my son's place, I was suddenly barraged with insults from behind and instinctively turned around. Krista, my son's wife, was glaring at me with eyes as if she saw something filthy. Originally today, my son Joseph had invited me, saying, "It's Krista's birthday, and it would be great if Mom could come and celebrate too." As soon as I arrived at their home, I was asked to help with meal preparations and to run errands for drinks, and I was already fed up. "Hey, ignoring me? I said get out, didn't I?" Krista, irritated by my lack of response, directed her demand at me again. "I got it. Then I'll leave." "Humph. Make it quick." I had reached my limit. I was furious at Krista, who had looked down on me and had been acting superior, and at my son, who had been using me. I took out my mobile phone from my purse and contacted a certain individual. "My name is Catherine. I am 70 years old this year, but I have been working for nearly 50 years at a major newspaper company where I got employed right after graduating from university, and I'm still an active employee. In high school, I enjoyed informing people about what's happening around them, as I gather news for the school as part of the newspaper club, and created large newspapers to stick on walls for all the students to enjoy. I worked hard, day and night when I was young. In today's terms, the work environment might be criticized, but I was just devoted to what I loved, so I never thought of my company as bad. My efforts were recognized by the company's higher-ups, and I have been serving as an executive for the past 10 years. Now, I have many subordinates who look up to me, and I feel blessed to be treated as an equal by people who are willing to deal with me even at this age. My happiness began to crumble a year ago. I had divorced my husband when I was young due to differences in values, but we had a son named Joseph. Since I married late, he's my only child. Joseph has always been domineering, so it seems he had a hard time finding a girlfriend, and at 34 he brought Krista, claiming she's the one I'm marrying. She was 32 at the time and showed up in an inappropriate short skirt and leopard print shirt. Just by looking, I felt this wouldn't work out and it gave me a headache. "Is this Joseph's mom? Krista looked at me as if she was sizing me up in a manner you wouldn't expect from someone you're meeting for the first time. It was absurd that I had to be judged by this person in such an indecent outfit, though I was the one who should be doing the assessing. "Nice to meet you. I'm Catherine, Joseph's mom. I'm currently working at a newspaper." "Wow, part-time at a newspaper at your age. Unbelievable. If it were me, I'd have quit working and be enjoying a leisurely retirement. You must be pretty short on cash." Krista was looking down on me, assuming I was part-time without anyone saying so. "Yeah, it's unbelievable, right? I was shocked too when I heard you're still working part-time." My son added, thinking I was part-time due to his lack of knowledge about my job. "It'd be different if you had a husband like Joseph working as a full-time employee at a famous company. But unfortunately, it seems like Catherine is all alone," Krista said, and indeed, my son works at a well-known communications company. But I heard he's always been a contract employee. It was strange she thought he was a full-time employee. "Krista, Joseph isn't a full-time employee." Mom, let's just leave it at that for today. We're off to eat French now. See ya." "Wait a minute." As if there was something inconvenient to discuss, my son interrupted me and quickly left the house with Krista. Still, I never imagined such a person would come into our lives. The thought of enduring her company in the years to come filled me with dismay. My gut feeling about Krista's attitude towards me proved to be right. It was dreadful. Driven by a sense of duty to forge at least a decent relationship with Krista, I invited her for tea over the weekend soon after she married my son. Before marrying my son, Krista had been a temporary worker, hopping from company to company, but she quit to focus on housework after getting married. It seemed she was relatively free most times, so surprisingly, she never declined my invitations. "Catherine, you're late." I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw her waving at me at our meeting spot while complaining, especially because she was flaunting expensive brand wallets and bags from high-end apparel brands. The accessories she wore were also ostentatious, making me self-conscious about the attention they drew. "Krista, where did you get those? Are you getting that much allowance?" Of course. Joseph works for a famous company as a full-time employee, so this is nothing. Unlike you, Catherine." It seemed Krista had a habit of looking down on others by flaunting luxury items, deliberately going to high-brand stores before meeting me. Throughout our time together, she looked down on everyone we passed, commenting, "What's with that shabby outfit? Catherine, did you see? Wearing poor stuff even makes your face look bad." I honestly didn't feel great watching her get drunk on her rich life, especially since she didn't earn the money herself. "Krista, the allowance you're bragging about comes from Joseph's earnings, right? It's not something to flaunt." "What? That's my business." "Oh, are you jealous because I took your son, Catherine? That's kind of creepy, so stop it." Krista played the victim as if her words were the absolute truth. It was pitiful that my son was giving her money, but he was just as much to blame. I didn't believe he earned enough to give her such large sums. I knew well that he was a contract employee, which meant less favorable conditions and no bonuses. If he was giving her so much money, he must be cutting corners elsewhere in their budget. I was suspicious of that. As I predicted, it was only a week later that my son came to me for financial advice. "Mom, I need to ask you for a favor." "What is it?" On a Sunday afternoon, my son came over with a serious expression and said, "I need help with the house loan repayments." "What? House loan? What was he talking about? They were supposed to be living in a rented condo." Confused, I tilted my head. Then my son began to explain the situation in detail. "Actually, I built a house last month, but there's been some trouble at work, and my salary might decrease." "You built a house? I haven't heard anything about that." I was stunned by the revelation that came out of my son's mouth. Building a house is fine, but isn't that something you'd report to your parents? He started explaining that as a contract employee, he found a very cheap piece of land and had a local contractor build the house. Given my son's pride, it's likely Krista had whined about wanting to live in a new house, and he had readily agreed. But recently, he caused a problem at work, and his salary was cut, so the loan repayments became uncertain. "Please, Mom, I'll definitely pay back this debt. I won't leave it unpaid. I'll repay it someday." My son, pleading more humbly than usual, seemed pitiable. No matter how troublesome he might be, he's still family. After much deliberation, I agreed to cover the monthly $1,200 house loan repayments for my son and his wife under my name. In return, I made him promise to repay me with interest in the future. "Thank you, Mom." "No, get a promotion and become a full-time employee soon instead." "I know." Relieved that I had agreed to his request, my son reverted to his usual casual tone. "Well, if this changes how my son and his wife treat me, it's a small price to pay. I'll even earn some interest in the future." At that moment, I might have been slightly pleased with myself for being able to help my son and his wife. However, after that, their attitude towards me only worsened. My son, perhaps getting carried away because he borrowed money from me, started pestering me to pay for his mobile phone bill and car loan as well. "Please, Mom, I'm begging you." It seems my son had no qualms about asking me for money if it meant keeping up appearances for Krista. Each time I sighed but agreed to his requests, on the condition that he would pay interest. Honestly, I receive a salary now that I could never spend in my lifetime, so lending money to my son and his wife felt like a duty. Krista, perhaps encouraged by something my son said, started to ask me for things she wanted. "Catherine, for the housewarming, please buy us a new sofa and bed. Catherine, there's a French restaurant I want to try. Take me there." I didn't fulfill all her requests, of course, but when I refused, Krista's mood visibly soured, so I reluctantly agreed to some. After being taken advantage of by my son and his wife for a year, the day finally came. On a Friday evening, coming home from work, I noticed a missed call from my son. After preparing dinner, I called him back. Mom? What is it? Are you free tomorrow?" "Yes, I'm free." I braced myself, expecting another request to take them somewhere. But what my son said next was unexpected. "Great! It's Krista's birthday tomorrow, and I was wondering if you'd come and celebrate with us." "Huh?" Taken aback by the unexpected invitation, I hesitated. But my son was asking so earnestly that I paused to think. "Krista wants you to come too, please." He insisted as usual, please. Well, celebrating a birthday once a year isn't too much to ask, so I agreed. "All right, I'll come tomorrow. Tell Krista." "Thanks, you're a lifesaver." My son's voice brightened up, reminiscent of when he was a little boy, which made me feel nostalgic. The next day, I arrived at my son's house with a gift of flowers. There she is. "Mom, buy these." "Huh?" As soon as he saw me, my son handed me a list. On it was an array of items like cake and drinks, all for today's consumption. Essentially, he was asking me to go shopping. "Please, I need to decorate the room. I can't leave it as it is, so help me out." Krista seemed to be out, not yet home. I see, he wants to surprise Krista. I agreed to go shopping, understanding my son's thoughtful intentions. When I returned with the heavy bottles of alcohol, Joseph and Krista were inexplicably lounging on the sofa. I wanted to ask about the decorations, but with Krista nearby, I couldn't. You're back, Catherine. You're so late. I'm hungry. Hurry up and cook." Krista, the birthday girl, didn't even thank me for coming and ordered me to cook. So that was their plan. I finally understood my son and his wife's intentions. They invited me over for Krista's birthday celebration just to make me do everything around the house. Knowing it would be futile to resist, I silently started cooking. Knowing my son, if I ordered delivery, he'd surely make me pay for it. It was better to cook with what was available at home. I chose some ingredients from the fridge, thought of a menu, and took hold of the knife. Just as I started preparing the vegetables. "Catherine is an outsider. Parasites, get out." I turned around in an instant to see Krista glaring at me as if I were something filthy. It seemed that my son had invited me today just to make me work. And what did she mean by ordering me to cook? On closer inspection, Krista was smiling at me, clearly enjoying teasing me. I grumbled inwardly, why do I have to put up with this? I felt foolish for having complied so readily with my son's request. "Hey, ignoring me? I said get out, didn't I?" Krista, increasingly irritated by my non-response, demanded again. I took a deep breath to calm my pounding heart. It's okay. I won't be manipulated by these people. Understood. I'll leave then. With a forced smile, I faced Krista, who seemed surprised that I agreed to leave so meekly. But she quickly snapped. "Humph, make it quick." I quickly gathered my things and headed for the door. I'd had enough. I was furious at Krista for her condescending attitude and at my son for using me. I took out my mobile phone from my purse and contacted a certain individual. Then I went home, ready to retaliate against my son and his wife while still seething with anger. First, I transferred all the loans, house, car, and mobile phone that my son owed me into Krista's name. This should free me from any obligation to pay them back. Krista didn't know that her husband was having me pay all this money. She'll learn exactly how much it costs to live. Shortly after, I received a reply from the person I had contacted. As expected, their testimony confirmed that Krista was an awful person. My son is hopeless, but Krista's actions are beyond the pale. She'll learn what it's like to go through hell. I smirked to myself at home. I was waiting, holding my breath, to see when the time bomb would go off, merely observing how things would unfold. And 6 months later, the situation drastically changed. It was a Monday, and I had just returned home from working hard at the start of the week. Unusually, there was a call from Krista on my mobile phone. Seeing the caller ID, I felt a rush of energy despite the day's fatigue. So it's finally come, I thought as I braced myself and pressed the call button. "What the hell is this, Catherine?" Krista shrieked as soon as I answered. Her shrill voice made me instinctively pull the phone away from my ear. "What do you mean?" I feigned ignorance and asked Krista. "Not what do you mean? I got a call saying there's a huge mess because the house loan, car loan, Joseph's mobile phone bill, and other bills are all overdue. Joseph won't say anything when I ask him." As expected, Krista hadn't realized that the repayment responsibilities she thought were covered by her affluent husband, Joseph, were now in her name. She confronted Joseph, who apparently had nothing to say since he'd been borrowing money secretly from me. I could almost picture my son's dumbfounded face. Krista, assuming I knew the situation, must have called me in a panic. "Oh, I just transferred the obligation to pay those bills from my name to yours." "What?" I could hear Krista gasping over the phone. "You might not know this, but I was the one paying for your house loan, car loan, and both of your mobile phone bills. Joseph doesn't even have the money to pay for his own house loan." "What?" Krista was clearly flustered by this revelation. "What do you mean?" "Didn't you know? Joseph does work for a well-known communications company, but he's not a full-time employee. He's a contract employee. So his salary is less than that of a full-timer, and he doesn't get any bonuses. Yet he's been pretending to have money just to impress you. It would be wise for you to pay more attention to such things about your own household." "Contract employee? No money?" Krista mumbled as if she was hearing foreign words for the first time. But undeterred, she tried to turn the tables. "I didn't know that, so you're lying. How pitiful to be poor in both money and spirit. It's true that when you don't have money, you can't afford to be generous. I'm not like that, so if you pay the overdue bills right now, I'll forgive you." I was utterly astounded by Krista's audacity to look down on me even now. Sighing internally, I prepared to play my final card. Who's really the poor one in spirit? Looking down on others as poor? Krista, I heard you've been looking down on even your friends, and for all your claims of being rich, you've been begging friends for money. How do you know about that? Krista's voice was frantic, and I couldn't help but smirk. I met a girl named Malia through my company's clients, and we hit it off at a social event. When I heard she was friends with you, we started talking, and she told me everything. Yes, the Malia I had contacted before changing the loan names was her. Malia and I had bonded over our grievances with Krista and agreed to inform each other if any of us were wronged. By mentioning Malia, it seemed Krista believed my words. Malia and... Yes, Malia, your friend since high school, right? She was angry because you started looking down on her after marrying Joseph. She said it was awful that you begged her for money, promising to pay back double in the future. She's decided to end the friendship with you. That's unfortunate, isn't it? Wasn't she your only friend? Apparently, Malia had had enough of being looked down upon and decided to cut off Krista after enduring her terrible attitude. Krista, who has few friends, mentioned that it would trouble her if Malia stopped being her friend. But given Krista's behavior, Malia had finally deleted her contact. Unbeknownst to Krista, she had lost a friend. That's impossible! Malia would never say such things. If you can't believe it, I could send you screenshots of our conversation. But let me warn you, if you try anything against Malia, I can bring up all that you've done to me and her to the police. Krista choked on her words in response to my firm stance. Having lost both her money and her trusted friend, she seemed to be left empty. Sadly, I'm cutting ties with you. Of course, make sure you repay the money you owe me, with interest. Interest? How much will that be? Do the math yourself. Oh, but that might be too difficult for you. After all, you only worked as a temporary worker before becoming a housewife. Oh, by the way, since I am a company executive, I'm quite good at calculating money. I could tell you the repayment amount right now, but it might be bad for your heart. So shall I not? That's impossible! Krista, completely deflated, muttered and then hung up the phone. I let out a big sigh, contacted Malia, and told her about the payback on Krista. Thank you, I'll make sure to stay away from her. That's wise. I'm cutting ties with them too. Since then, Malia and I have become closer, occasionally going out to eat together. Although Malia is much younger, I like her for being earnest and competent, which is a sharp contrast to Krista. Malia seems to respect me as well, which I find pleasing. Time passed and the couple started looking for new jobs, driven by debt repayment. Joseph, who had aspirations of becoming a full-time employee but had worked as a contract employee, and Krista, who had been a housewife, struggled to find companies that would hire them. Joseph had no choice but to continue working as a contract employee at his current company. Krista, however, managed to get a job with a small subcontractor for a printing company. When she went to visit a client company, she ran into Malia, her former friend. According to Malia, Krista was stunned to see Malia as the sales department manager and exclaimed in disbelief. Krista, who had always thought she was the wealthier one, was shocked to learn that Malia was a hardworking employee managing a lot of work. Unfortunately, we can't enter into a contract with your company. Why not? Because we can't build a trust relationship with someone who looks down on others. Please leave. What? Krista, pale-faced, tried to retort, but was grabbed by her boss and ejected from the room. I don't know what happened after that, but she must be getting a good scolding from her boss. Seeing Malia laugh as she said this made me feel very uplifted. Since then, both Joseph and Krista have continued to repay their debts to me. Krista, struggling with her new job, doesn't dress in high-end brands on her days off anymore. Instead, she wears plain clothes and rests at home, worn out. She probably won't ever again think of her household as wealthy, nor look down on others. Having resolved to have no more dealings with them, except for debt repayment, I continue to tackle many tasks at work and enjoy outings with Malia from time to time. What seemed like a dire situation at one point turned out to be, perhaps, a valuable life lesson for my son and his wife. And today, as always, I get ready and head to a workplace filled with colleagues.